My next guest is part of the backbone of one of the most popular bands of the past 5 decades, and they're on tour this summer promoting their 35th anniversary. Oh my God, 35 years. The band is one of my favorites, and I know one of yours. I think we're finished with the intros here. I'm speaking with my dear friend Walt Parazaider from Chicago. Walt, welcome aboard.
Hey, how you doing, Rick? And thanks for having me.
No problem whatsoever. Does it seem like 35 years, buddy?
Well, when we sat around my kitchen table in Chicago and shook hands and said, let's make a rock and roll band with horns on February 15th of 1967, honestly, Rick, I thought because of the personnel we had and that blind faith that young people have that, hey, we're going to make a band that really is good, I thought we'd have a couple of hit records or whatever. But to be sitting here talking to you in the middle of our 36th season of touring, and we've never, ever missed, and I'm knocking on wood with this, never missed a touring season ever. And I think we're the only band that can really say that. Other bands come back for their reunion tours, they come for their anniversary tours and all that, but we're a working band that's played all this while. So to be honest with you, who does anything for 35 years or 36 years now with the work that we have? But thanks to your nice fans out there and you nice people at the stations, my gosh, here we have a job, but I would have never thought I'd be talking to you 35 years later.
This is super. Now, I've heard so many urban legends concerning the origin of the band. I mean, it transformed from the Big Thing to Chicago Transit Authority. Then you guys had the run-in with Richard J. Daley, who said, "I'll sue your ass if you use that name." And then you changed it to Chicago. I've heard so many stories. Can you kind of give us the rundown of the truth? What's truth and what's not?
You know what, Rick? You just hit on 90% of the truth. We were called the Big Thing. We had an Italian manager, a great friend of the late Joe DiFrancisco, who said, everybody's saying Ting today. Ting this, Ting that. He says, and there's a lot of you, so we'll call you the Big Ting. And that's where the band started. Then, of course, Chicago Transit Authority came along, which was the name of the bus line for all you folks out there that don't have that, outside of the MTA in Boston, that wouldn't be too relevant. And that's why we did change the name to Chicago. So, you had all of that right. And King Daley, Mayor Daley Sr., it wasn't him who said, we'll sue your ass, but it was the CTA.
Really?
Now, it's very funny because, we had the name CTA, but it was real funny when they didn't want to pay us royalties on, does anybody really know what time it is, when they were using that for their theme song. So we made sure that they paid royalties. I think you know as much as I do about it. So if you play saxophone, we're in Atlanta, Georgia tonight. Come on out and play horn and spin some yarns. It sounds like you got the right story.
Real good. The thing that reminded me the most about why Chicago was such a success had to be the horns and the woodwinds. You guys in Blood, Sweat, and Tears had the horns, and there were very few bands that actually could pull it off like you guys did. When you guys were broached the idea of adding horns to a rock and roll band, how did that all happen?
Well, Terry, Danny, and myself were playing in a couple bands, and the late Terry Kath and I go back to playing with Dick Clark's Caravan of Stars, backing up 15 acts from Tom Jones, Peter and Gordon, and all these acts, and going from, L.A. all the way to Vermont in the summer and all of that. And I just, we were fans of James Brown, and we were fans of all the R&B acts. And I just started thinking, what if we just put together a rock and roll band with horns where the horns weren't an afterthought? And no offense to James Brown with his which is just terrific, but where the horns are not an afterthought, they're an integral part of the musical fabric. And, isn't it funny? It worked, and thank God it did, because, it's kept us off the streets and out of jail, Rick, for a long time.
Now, your tour is going on through the end of September. It's the 35th anniversary. Any surprises we can expect we should know about for the 35th anniversary? Well,
I think so. I tell you this, the anniversary actually started in March. I don't know if you're aware, but we had a pretty thrilling musical experience on the 26th of May when we were asked to play with the National Symphony Orchestra, 110-piece orchestra conducted by Eric Kunzel, and Ossie Davis was the host of a salute to the heroes and to the fallen on 9/11, plus the heroes all the way from the Revolutionary War up to Desert Storm and up to the stuff that's happened in Afghanistan. So there was Charles Durning, who's a war hero, was on that show. My friend, who's a bass player from the inner city of Chicago, Joe Montaigne, was on the show. Steve Buscemi, who was a New York fireman, and we got to play a couple of songs with that orchestra on the west lawn of the Capitol building on the eve of Memorial Day, which was such an honor. And as Lee Loughnane, our trumpet player, said afterwards, it was really emotional, and I'm not ashamed to say that to you because it was incredible. But Lee said, I feel like after what happened when we were on the road, we put on 9/11 that we gave something back today.
That's outstanding.
And another aside, our friend Joe Montaigne read a letter from a retired New York fireman who lost one son was a policeman, one was a fireman in New York, and he lost them in the tragedy. And he wrote this letter after losing them. And Joe read this, and I met the fireman later on, this man, and I said, I'm so terribly sorry for your loss. And he said this in the present tense, not the past. He says, my sons and I, we're big Chicago fans. We are big Chicago fans. Not that they were or whatever. And it just struck me that, maybe, Rick, we've done something right over these years, and, we're in the happiness business, and we try to do our part in our little way. This concert, if I sound gushy about it, forgive me, but I have to share this with your listeners, and probably a lot of them saw this because this was carried network on all the PBS stations. One of the highlights of our career, and that started this tour, and now we're playing to sold-out crowds. We've been through Florida, we're in Atlanta, and we'll be doing this all summer long, and the show is different than it's ever been, and if people like our fan club and all the core fans that have supported us all these years, and thanks from the bottom of Chicago's musical heart for allowing us to do what we do so well, and that's aimed at all the listeners out there, because without them, we wouldn't be able to do this. We put a show together that is real interesting. It's in 3 acts. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. There's some stuff that people will recognize, of course, or I think we'd get run out of town, but there's some little gems and surprises in it. And along with that, tonight I'm going to start mentioning to people that thanks to Rhino Records, we sold out Chicago Records, the record company. They're putting out a 39-song CD July 2nd, digitally remastered, which has never been done with our music. And a 39-song CD, you being in the business, you know what that would be to put that on a couple of CDs.
You betcha,
and these
pal.
are all hits of ours that are going to come out. And thanks to Rhino Records, we're going to be allowed to have product out in the 5th decade of our career. And that comes out on the 2nd, and there's another surprise on July 16th that they've digitally remastered, and they're putting out Chicago 1, 2, and 3. And this is going to be an ongoing project for the next couple of years. So we've got some new, interesting stuff out there that people have never heard. And when I heard it, I went, holy cow, we recorded this. I heard this on vinyl. It sounded great on vinyl. Now I've heard it digitally remastered. Geez, what technology can do to make something sound even better than it was originally.
I'll tell you one thing, that segues into what I wanted to ask you next. Going back to Chicago 2 from 1970, that was one of my all-time favorite hits, Make Me Smile. Now, the chorus song, wasn't going to be a top 10 hit, but the one part that seemed to always get clipped on Top 40 radio was this additional minute and a half or so that had all the horns build up behind it. And I do remember hearing that on Monday Night Football back in the early 70s. Is that a true story?
You know what? I think you did. The same way you would have heard Alive Again when that was the NBA's theme song in the 80s.
I love that song. It's still one of my favorites.
It's funny you mentioned that because Jimmy Pankow wrote that Make Me Smile, and that truly was our first hit. And to be driving around town and hearing Make Me Smile, all of a sudden we went, holy cow, we've got something on the radio. But that was part of Monday Night Football, if I remember correctly, and I don't think rock and roll Alzheimer's is set in yet, Rick. And then also in the 80s, all of a sudden, Alive Again, I believe that's from I think that's the 12th album we had that on, and all of a sudden we heard that identifiable guitar riff start happening, and went, hey, that's sort of cool, because we're all sort of sports nuts. When you're talking about the Cubs, between the Cubs, the Bulls, the Lakers, whatever it is, golf, snail races, we're out there watching it because we're out on the road and it passes the time.
Is there any rhyme or reason why you guys decided to just number your albums Chicago 2 from, I think it was Chicago 2, then 9 became your greatest hits, and then up to 78 where you had Hot Streets, which was your 12th album, and then it was just all numbered. Any particular reason why you guys decided just to number them instead of name them?
I think it was a conscious decision, because we thought of the thing of the works of Stravinsky, and I'm classically trained and was the protege of the E-flat clarinetist in the Chicago Symphony. So when this idea came up of let's really chronicle and number all the records, so that if somebody 100 years from now if they look at the works of Stravinsky, he's got his first symphony and his different works, and you can go in and pull out what he did at a certain time, that if people 100 years from now, a musician or whoever would say, gee, Chicago, let's see what they did on their third album. How about their 26th album? Oh, that 25th one was that Christmas record. Okay. And it was a conscious decision to go ahead and chronicle this as the classical people did. Of course, I went for it big time, being classically trained, but playing in the gin mills of Chicago, rock and roll and all that, because I found out after getting a degree in clarinet that the saxophone player in a rock and roll band got girls, so that's why I switched over. And you're laughing, but I'm not kidding. At 12 years old, think of the testosterone you had going at 12.
I know, totally. This new one that's coming out in July, what number will that one be?
Well, now, if I'm not mistaken, we're talking 27, aren't we?
27. I was just going to say.
Yeah, we've got 25 was the
track.
Christmas album, 26 was the live album. We've got Chicago 27 coming out July 2nd, and I'm really proud of the body of work we have, but also is excited that Rhino has thought enough of us to put a project together that over the next couple of years you're really going to see some surprises. Starting with this campaign and with this 39 hits. When I think about 39 hits, my gosh, it's mind-boggling for me, and they're all digitally remastered. We're pretty excited. So I'd say if people own a TV and they pay their electric bill, come about the middle of June here, you're going to start seeing ads for all of this on TV. And I'm just going to mention in a nice little way for people to look out at this in the concerts, because every year we play for about 1 million people.
That's right.
And it's sort of nice to at least let them know what's going on in your musical life.
Real good. Speaking of also promoting, do you have a website you'd like to promote?
We got ChicagoTheBand.com.
ChicagoTheBand.com. Is it
right? You can log on and catch where these 8 goofballs from Chicago are running around, where we're going to be playing and everything. To all your listeners across the country, we're going to be everywhere from Seattle to New York City. We've just got done with our Florida swing up the eastern seaboard to the Midwest to the Southwest, and every place but Folsom Prison, thank God.
Real good. I want everyone to check out ChicagoTheBand.com for future dates. Also, look for the new CD, the 27th CD by this fabulous band. And once again, my guest has been Walt Parazaider of Chicago. The tour is going on all summer. We invite you to check them out at a venue near you. Walt, thanks for being my next guest.
Well, you know what? I'm happy to be your next guest, and I have to thank you, your staff, and all the people listening to this for all their support over the years. Like I said earlier, thank you from the bottom of Chicago's musical heart. We're allowed to do something we love to do because of all of you. Thank you.